Oh, my mic was muted. I called it. I knew it. When you minimize or like shrink down the vMix window, the bar disappears and I can't find it. So I was like literally maximizing it in that last second to try to get it up. It's my bad, chat. It's my bad.
Not trusting our fine producer, Pine. Pine's been kicking ass, man. We got to trust her.
I always mute. I never want to be hot mic'd because, we're talking about like our foot fungus and back hair because we're old men. That's just kind of what we talk about. Our golf clubs and all sorts of other old men things. But we're looking at two teams of players. Some of them are older. Looking at TSM, you've got some fellow boomers on that roster, maybe a little bit younger than you and I. But this is a team that has definitely been struggling coming into the year, facing off against a team that has very much been on the rise.
Yeah.
You look at the two teams compared to one another. Immortals was one that was maybe on the lower end of the spectrum at the end of 2020. TSM ended 2020 by coming in second at First Strike. Not a win, but still not bad. That's not terrible at all. And then this Immortals roster, again, it's like they just keep juggling the roster around and still manage to find wins. They replaced their in-game leader Nature with Rossi after Nature stepped down for personal reasons, and they still managed to qualify. There are teams who have had the same 5 players who have qualified less than Immortals has with different rosters during VCT.
Yeah, and even looking at that roster, I was just confirming before, too, Rossi, which is potentially right now the sub, is also the one that's going to be in-game calling for the team. And if I'm not mistaken as well, they're currently in a practice facility. So where they could potentially get an edge, because we talked about how they were on a rise, I feel that they sort of like they're starting to slow down a bit too, right? They were qualifying but not moving as further as we wanted them to towards the beginning of the year. So it's like give or take what day shows up here for Immortals, and there's not necessarily inconsistency, but you're starting to see where some teams right now might have a chance to come back into this one. Although, head-to-head, you're looking at they're playing against TSM, and the last time that they played against TSM, it was very, very, very one-sided, where TSM struggled to get things going on for that team. And now, as you mentioned here, Bach, where they've been going through a lot of agent changes, they've been looking to try to find the right footing, triple duelist, double sentinel, a double controller rather, with a brimstone and an omen at some point. Now pulling out a sky, changing over drone to a Sova. It seems finally we might see some light at the end of the tunnel with all of these changes. And you're looking at this roster, you're like, where's Brax, right? Brax was the latest addition to the team. Tried to qualify with him in stage 1. It didn't work out. Now Hayes is coming in. He's IGLing. Now they're qualifying. They haven't lost a single time on, I think, Ascent, if I'm not mistaken, for these maps. So they're finally starting to walk straight on this line and trying to reach that goal that they wanted to for like the last half a year.
I would love to look at those pictures again, only because, like, when you look at everyone, like, they've got that standard, like, CS pose, arms crossed, eyebrow throw, and Hayes looks like he's doing a magazine commercial for Levi jeans. Like,
he's a
got,
handsome
like,
man,
in his
dude.
back pocket, neck's cocked up, he's looking solid. It's just like the difference between the two is actually quite ridiculous. Now, sure, we've got TSM and we've got Immortals, and I'm kind of curious, what maps we're going to end up heading into with the series. But looking at the two teams, what players do you want to highlight for both of these teams? Because, a lot of times we want to pick out the star players. Everyone wants to say, oh, let's talk about Wardell. And, on the other side, I guess at this point you would probably talk about Shot Up. But you wanted to profile some different players coming into the series.
Correct. I definitely wanted to bring in Hayes for TSM because it's like not necessarily a redemption arc, but he did definitely sit out from the first one, coming back into this one, as I mentioned before, as an IGL, and he's been doing quite well in terms of IGLing for the team. And Chemicals, who we highlighted it before when he first joined the roster with Nature and playing as a jet operator, looked very good for the team and mechanically looked very gifted as a jet. But now moving into when he was, I think it's called Straight Outta Ranked, his old team, playing as a Cypher again, and he's finding some great results going back to a Sentinel too. So 2 Sentinels going head-to-head, where in certain maps, you'll see still Chemicals playing as a Jet, and on certain maps, you'll see a player like Hayes going to that whole meme at the beginning of the summertime during the Ignition series, being like, hey, when is Hayes actually going to be playing a Viper? Because he always said that Viper was OP even before the bust that she's just gotten. And now we actually do see Hayes pulling out the Viper from time to time on a map like Split. So this will be great to watch if that series does go onto this map, into a series on Split.
I don't think we're going to be going there, but we'll pull up the maps in just a second to see where we are going to be headed. You know, you mentioned Viper on Split. It's something that we used to see a little bit, and then every once in a while you'd find a Pepper in. Now we're seeing Viper on other maps, specifically looking at Icebox, which will be a map we do see played in this series. So Immortals comes in and bans Split. That was kind of where my mind was at. Remember, coming into this, we were talking about this one being a lot more difficult to predict. I was thinking, okay, they're going to ban Icebox or potentially Split, and then TSM was going to ban Bind or Icebox. I thought that was the direction we were going to be moving in, even though Immortals has had decent record on Icebox. I just felt like something was telling me we were going to go in that direction. But TSM actually bans Haven, which is a bit more surprising.
Yeah.
Immortals ban Split, not all that surprising, and we end up on our final maps, which would be Ascent, Icebox, and then Bind is the final map, which that one is a little bit more interesting. Like you said it coming into today, TSM has been playing all the maps, sure.
Correct.
But Bind is a map that we've talked about Immortals and their potency on the map in the past.
Exactly.
So to see that map make it through is a little bit different. We weren't expecting that.
No, I wasn't expecting that one for the third map. I wasn't expecting Icebox as a map picked by Immortals on top of that, too, because Immortals have been banning that map going into the open qualifiers into this, too. And where TSM, yeah, they've had some good results going into that map more recently, but with them having a 5-map pool into the open qualifiers to the closed qualifiers, it felt like they were comfortable playing any map, where I feel that Bind could potentially not necessarily be banned, not because it's potentially their weaker map, but it's more to try to counter ban versus Immortals. So you look back in the series, a pick that's straight out of left field for Immortal, at least for me, to take Icebox and to also keep Bind in there is going to be a very interesting one for TSM. So I think this whole matchup is going to be nothing but surprises, and I'm throwing out my prediction out the window. I just want to watch this as a fan and see how it unfolds.
I mean, the truth is, I don't want to predict either, because I also like both of these teams. I like what Immortals does with this younger roster. I like how they've managed to stay relevant despite several roster changes. And I mean, TSM at one point in time was considered the best team in North America. Obviously, that's going back a bit, but even when they started to slip, they were still like number 2 or number 3. 2021 has just not been good to them. They only made it into one Challengers event in Stage 1. And they didn't do well in that Challengers event either. And now they're making it into another Challengers event. But I feel like this is a really big game for TSM. And I also think that this is potentially one of the bigger tournaments that TSM is going to play in this year, because the impact that this could have if they were to lose this could really change the way this roster plays. I think we could see some more changes being made. We mentioned Rax coming in as the 6th man. And even though that didn't stick, who's to say what that is going to look like long term? We still don't really know. There's so many teams that have like a 6th player. We don't really know what they're planning. Like, we have no idea what the goal is.
Well, now with the agent select here for Ascent, you do have Hayes coming in with the Killjoy. This is a map where potentially you could see now Chemicals playing as a Killjoy, where just before in the open qualifiers, he was playing a bit of Cypher. So going into a Killjoy could definitely help a lot with potentially the utility of Astra being picked up here by JC Stani. And flexibility right now, difference into an Ascent matchup. JC Stani at some point in the open qualifiers moving into this bracket was playing a Jet, right? At some point he was playing Jet Operator 2. We're like, oh, mechanically JC Stani is going to be another one of those players when Chemicals is not going to play a Jet Operator anymore. Could be fairly good. And he's also flexed Astra on other maps like Split for JC Stani. But now that he pulls him out, or pulls her out rather, sorry, for Ascent, this is actually pretty good here for Immortals. This is a small pick out of left field, maybe to try to disrupt power playing here for TSM and not T1 at the top there. And we'll see what happens moving into this matchup. Thank you.
You fixed it.
Yep.
Look what you did.
Abracadabra.
Well, you're clearly the producer, and you were trying to cover for yourself, making it sound like it was production that made a mistake.
Exactly. It was me.
It was you the whole time. You know, we're going to see Astros brought into play on both sides. There's going to be stars everywhere. That's going to be fun to watch.
Oh, no. Yeah, I just realized that.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of stars, turrets, recon darts, a little bit of smoke play as well. Now, what's interesting with TSM is, or not TSM, excuse me, with Immortals, is they go for the Viper play in addition to the Astra.
Yes.
Which to me is a little odd because I feel like they play very similarly in how they control maps. You know, you have the wall, you have the smoke. Now, obviously, you don't have gravity well, or I think the other one is the pulse one, the stun, the disabled. You know, it is a little bit interesting, and we'll see how that plays out. But we do have this Sky in play for Sabrosa, and Sabrosa's been playing Flash Agents for a long time, so curious to see how he's going to work that incredibly irritating Hawk Flash that we've all come to love in our ranked matches.
Well, on the attacker side, it seems as though TSM are just looking to get some pressure here on the B side to start. All 5 players are there, and you're right, Mark. There's been a small change. Rossi used to be that Astra player, now pulling out Viper. Viper and Astra together could be very deadly, but I find that the composition you have for TSM is still pretty good to try to work against that, and that's Wardell with first blood at the switch.
Wardell right around the corner, taken down through the smoke. And there's that Hawk coming out, the guiding light to keep them at bay while they guarantee the spike plant. It will be a 4-on-3. There's a little bit of Venom on the ground that's preventing Rossi from moving up. That's actually Rossi's own Venom on the ground, mind you. Recon Dart gets taken out, but look at how they set this one up. They've basically eliminated that other door. I love the setup with that Viper Venom on the ground, but it's not really working out so well as Sabrosa pops off with 2 kills. It was Sabrosa who got into the site using the dog to lead in, and then just every flash on Earth flying through into the site. And it'll be TSM who pick up the pistol.
Still very done there for TSM to adapt right on a pulse plan because they have to play against an Astra. But knowing that Astra has already fallen down, they don't have to worry about a gravity well that's going to be thrown all the way towards the back of the site. So have all 4 players play in the back and see what happens, go for the trades, and you still have 4 players very good on paper in terms of how much firepower they can bring. It's a very clean pulse plan for the attacker side for TSM to start. Second round, though, you see there's an early pressure happening towards mid side, and that Recon Dart just pinged 2, at least maybe even 3. A wall bang from a Marshall, a peek from Cat, and it's Wardell again with the first blood.
Wardell hitting shot after shot here on the Marshall, trying to spam through. In the meantime, though, Sabrosa's actually waltzed out onto the A site, or B site, excuse me. And again, it was the same thing. Sabrosa leads in with the guiding light, and then follows up with the dog to just charge in, and then another guiding light to make sure it's safe, and then just kind of walks out onto the site. Makes it look super easy. And they were so focused on everything that was happening in mid, no one was even playing towards B. But if someone had been there, Sabrosa could have still potentially found an opening.
This is where I'm going to find things a little bit, my question mark going into this matchup on TSM on the attack, because when they faced off against Immortals, Immortals did a very good job punishing individual plays. So if they want to work off Wardell that's going to be opping, marshalling, he's usually going to play that solo. And then you have somebody like Sabrosa, he's going to try to activate first, but sometimes also lurking as the Sky and using the flashes for himself. So if he also gets punished on the plays versus Immortals, then it makes it a lot more difficult for the rest of the players. Only 3 more remaining on paper, in the roster to try to execute. That's where it gets tough. So I want to see more of TSM. The question mark is, have they adapted a little bit more to work a little bit more as a group on these executions? And so far, it's been the case. You see Cutler working together with Drone on the A side. You have Hayes and Sabrosa towards the B side, and that Marshall still on mid. So a nice default just to try to get the Immortals rotating left and right and waste that utility. So you see that already coming up on B side. 1 star less to go, and let's see where TSM hits it.
Yet again, Sabrosa sends in the Trailblazer, but the game imitates life as the Tasmanian Tiger is taken out and extinct IRL, sadly. Now, he got spotted on the other side of the Viper wall over in B main. JC Stani, though, gets dinked on the initial peek from Drone and can't get the recoil under control after that. Tries to pull down, but the rifle just gets away from him. Good timing on the peek from Rossi. And I like this as well, activating the Venomous Orb over on short to make it a little bit easier.
10 seconds.
Now, Wardell has to be careful, but like you said, 10 seconds, they've got to get out and try and get the spike secured. Wardell's popped the ult, the knives have come out, but there's, ooh, they barely get the backup there in time. And they do get the spike down, but it's all going to come down to Wardell. Wardell's got to time this one nicely. You mentioned the flank, and Sabrosa does chime in finally. And again, Wardell has the knives out, but it's a rifle versus those knives. It's not going to matter. Wardell gets there just in the nick of time, catches Chemicals going for a reload, trying to peek from upper. It's 3-0 to start things off here for TSM as they get their pick on Ascent, and you know, they're just going to do what they do best on the map. That was actually one of the things that kind of surprised me. I thought, you know, we would see Ascent banned. I wasn't certain that we would go to this map. That was the one that I was questioning, was whether or not Immortals would ban Split or Ascent. And I thought, honestly, we would see them ban Ascent just because TSM plays Ascent a lot, and they always have.
One thing I did really like, though, at least from TSM and from Wardell versus Gen G, the matchup that helped them qualify into this game where they beat Gen G on this map too, very convincingly, is when Wardell also has the knives. So he's not playing further back. I like how he's also rifling right now. Yes, it is against an eco. Some decent trades at least, though, but still, the player advantage goes for TSM. But what I was trying to say is, with Wardell pushing very aggressively and creating space right now with the knives, has been a thorn on the side of Gen G. And on that previous round was the thorn on the side of Immortals. And the great lurk continues on from Sabrosa on that previous round, that now Immortals, there's potential going into the later rounds where they can't really stack on sites, and they always have to split out because they have to be wary of all these splits happening.
There's the final kill coming through. Drone got a 4K on the round. I love, too, as they were taking the site, Cutler thought he picked up the bomb. He went to default spot and tried to plant. It took him a second to realize what was going on. Drone, 8-1 performance coming out from Drone. It's a player who we really haven't been able to speak too much about in 2021, just as TSM has not managed to get to this point enough. We haven't seen a lot of TSM in 2021. In fact, when you look, it's basically just open qualifiers, which, I mean, that's obviously all there's been. It's been VCT all year long. So Drone will have the ult online. Sabrosa has the Seekers available as well. Rossi has Viper's Pit, so there's the ability to shut down a section of the map if they were to choose to do so. And they do have a full buy coming in, so it wouldn't be the worst round to do that. There's the Seekers coming out to give away positions. Ace is going to go for the peak. There's backup from Wardell. Look at the molly damage coming out as Chemicals makes it look easy getting the double. Wardell is there with the follow-up. Shotup's trying to do what he can over in B, but Sabrosa on the other side of the door can't escape before Rossi comes in with the peak. It is down to a 2-on-2, but it's a scary 2-on-2 because Wardell has the op in hand. And on the other side, you've got JC Stanley, a player that we haven't seen up too much in the past, but you kind of have to.
It's 2v1 on site, though, so they are going to be able to get into the site here and get a plant. Drone's going to be in position. He's going to be hurt at the same time, though, so very dangerous on a pulse plant where the advantage could come back for Immortals.
He's waiting for the recon dart. Now he's got it, and that does give away the position. So you got one pulse. Recon dart will result in some shock darts flying out, and it's actually going to deal great damage to JC Steiny, who's down to 45 HP now. Swamps off the op over to a rifle. Some stars going down to try to gain access to the site. It's going to probably be a gravity well towards the back corner, and it is. Smoke coming out on the door from the Jet. They're trying to escape from Garden, but they haven't been able to get out just yet. Now the smoke fades, but it's going to come down to a 1v1. It's Rossi who's low on HP against Wardell,
I love it.
who knows he has to go to the sidearm. There's the smokes coming out. The fly through with the Classic. Got a little scary there as a couple shots came out from the Classic. Is he going to be able to get away from this explosion? No. So the op will not come into the next round unless they decide to purchase it. Wardell does have the knives available, but decides to go for the buy anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you've won 5 rounds in a row there for TSM, right. And I just love that 2 versus 2, even that 2 versus 1, knowing that both players are at Hell's side, and Wardell dashes on the other end just to have the off angle against his opponent and waste on the clock in case he was getting chased down, just to make sure that the time is of the essence and time is going to be favorable for TSM on the pulse plant should he die. but he saves the round here for TSM, makes things very difficult for Immortals. Their honor broken by 2 Spectres and 3 Phantoms. As you see in this picture-in-picture, an early Viper's Pit towards the A side from Rossi so they could focus. Look at the amount of stars on Catwalk, on mid, on B side. I mean, we don't know who's, but it's still going to be TSM taking the upper hand, pushing and gaining control of Pizza, but it's funneling towards this stack.
Look at all the stars and utility all over the map. There's so much between both Killjoys and Viper and Astra. There's just a ton laid out across the minimap at any given point. Yet again, you've got that one-way orb on short, and you've got the ult used as well. So Viper's Pit has been utilized on A, but it doesn't seem to be scaring them too much. They seem content to continue in this direction. There's still the possibility of another smoke as a star gets dropped on short. Timing will be of the essence, and there's the pull through.
Huge.
But it's just easy peasy for Rossi on the other side, still inside the ult over on A.
Get out of my way.
It's down to a 3-on-5. Numbers very much in favor of Immortals, who are looking to win their first round. Wardell finally used the knives, but it's a little bit too late. We're down to a very low end on clock, and it was questionable at that. A flawless round victory coming in from Immortals. With 14 seconds left, Wardell decided to use the ult over in Garden. I mean, it was a 2-on-5 at that point.
Yeah, but I think the better part here for Rossi is really leveraging his utility, right? Because for me, it was like, okay, well, the ult's a little bit too far up towards the A side. TSM, if they win this fight versus Rossi playing over towards that tree side, it's going to be easy for them to push into the site. But you have the poison cloud that comes up. That creates a one-way and also a better crosshair placement so that Rossi, JC Stani, could get those kills as the Astra on tree. And allowing that drops 2 players instantly with help from Rossi. And it just makes things very difficult for TSM to even lurk on that mid side. So a great way to put the first round on the board, but now that the ult is gone, they still have 3 on the board. The Killjoy ult, they have a Hunter's Fury, and they also have shot up with the Empress that's available, where it's currently heading towards this B side, cleared by the Trailblazer that's only going to get a bit of information from that shot that was heard from Staircase, but they don't know that there's 2 other players playing on that side for TSM versus Immortals.
You're probably going to see Hayes go up and throw that ult down here in a second. As another recon dart actually comes out. There's the Hunter's Fury to try to clear things out, but no, Hayes doesn't use the ult. And that is incredibly detrimental.
He only got it after dying there. He was still 1 orb away.
Oh, you know what? I'm looking at the wrong side. I'm brain dead. I really am an iron caster.
All good.
Chemicals was the one with the ult. I was just looking at both sides. Excuse me. Rossi lining things up over on short with Chemicals. And I feel like that's going to be a very well-held area on the map for IMT. Rossi seems to have short on lockdown, especially with that one-way and some backup as well from whoever is playing on short given the round. JC Stani has been there at times. That round he actually had his teammate, I think it was Chemicals, was there. And it was Gangsta. So they had backup there. But his ult on long was weird, but his utility on short is really spot on.
Yeah, and I think the support that they have from even Chemicals putting his nanoswarms on the ground, even maybe 2 rounds ago when they tried to push aggressively on the tree side and it looked a little bit open and left behind for Immortals, the ability being popped on the the nanoswarm with combination of the poison cloud, right? You have the debuff, the decay going on top of the 50 damage by running through it. You just melt down right after on that catwalk spawn. So you could definitely see it. The A side Viper defense with the Astra and also the Killjoy utility has been like a no-go so far, like a do not enter zone. I'm currently locked up in my room. Please don't come in. I'm gaming hard. And that's Immortals right now on the defense on that side. Lurks on mid have been pretty decent, where we'll have to see if a split towards the mid side will work.
This is awkward. Cosmic Divide comes out, as well as both Killjoy ults. So that'll slice the map in half, and you can see the effect it has is it's caused them to go across the map to another area. They'll go ahead and get the spike secured, though, over on the A site. How does this ult impact their post plant setup? As you can see just how weird it is with its current position. I like Wardell's move, knowing there was one upper, tries to make a move in that direction with the shorty. Cutler's still in position here with the Sheriff. Oh, the shot's not quite squeezing over the top. Finally does get one above the top rail. There's still some shock darts coming out. There's a nice flash coming out as well. The Leer proves to be too much for Cutler to deal with. The forces are dwindling right now, but there is still that Molly to deal with coming in from their Killjoy. Now they have to go for the re-peek as time is of the essence. The spike is being stuck. There's only one player left remaining. Shot up. Able to get the last kill on the round as Sabrosa tried to lock things down. But with 2.62 left, Immortals will get the defuse. It was 5-0 coming off the start for TSM, but Immortals keeps themselves in the game, winning 3 straight rounds. That said, that was a bit of an eco buy. They had some sheriffs. They didn't spend too much. So now TSM is coming into this one with a bit more cash. That will include the op in the hands of Wardell.
And chat probably is wondering, like, okay, this updraft from Wardell, was it really useful? At that point, it was an eco going in, right? The couple of shares moving in, and they actually were able to spend a lockdown in terms of a resource to be able to get that plant, so it was very much needed on their end on the attacker side, but they also forced out the Killjoy ult and the Cosmic Divide from Immortals. So trying to even out the tally here in terms of the abilities for ultimates, you definitely do see now Seekers for Sabrosa with shot up on the Empress. This is going to be around with your Empress and run right behind it. The way that TSM does it, they just keep doing and working that way. It's stopped actually by a snake bite and nano swarm, but at least Hayes made it through and he could go for a plant.
It was interesting too, there was some Astra utility on short that caught Rossi. So Rossi got stunned and dazed by that Astra utility. Not that it made too much of a difference. There's that smoke on long. Nice shot onto the Leer. As strange as that is to say. But yeah, look at this flank on short. It's all going to come down to timing. Drone does get spotted out, has to fight against now both players who are facing that direction. Wardell just has to wait for the smoke to fade, but it's all Wardell. Wardell's got the op missed shot, not where it needs to be. Can't find a follow-up either. Dashes into the wall initially on an attempted escape. And it will be Immortals yet again winning the round. They did use Shot Up's ult, so Empress was deployed. But Seekers were brought out from Sabrosa as well. 4 in a row now for IMT, trying to counter TSM's 5-0 start. And
speaking about countering, it's a perfect way for them to stop that Seeker's rush from TSM as that Nanoswarm and Snakebite really split out the offense. But at least I thought in a pulse plan situation it would have been good, but it didn't really allow for TSM to play inside the site, forced to play further back. Even though Drone had a really good flank going on, that small adjustment of putting the alarm bot, just taking care of that so they don't have to worry about a flank for now. Once the alarm came out, it was a quick trade happening where Rossi won that upper hand against Drone right after and got the perfect trade and just allowed Immortals to push into the site right after. As you're running less on numbers and you're trying to win the fights against time, it's still them that takes the upper hand. But a Sheriff buy going in for the team of TSM. We see a couple of them with shields, but it's still looking for Immortals to tie things up on a 5-5 scoreline.
One enemy remaining.
JC Stunny, you know, we talked about it when we first saw the op purchase from JC Stunny. I felt like I wasn't sure what to expect, especially when paired up against someone like Wardell, who is a bit more of a prolific opper. But the performance from JC Stunny has not been bad. It's not to say that I expect terrible performance, but when you're going toe-to-toe with someone like Wardell, it's definitely difficult. And I think that JC Stunny has held their own. Not exactly, you know, lighten things up, but even that in that last round, just padding the stats a bit, getting some kills in the ego rounds. The thing that worries me is because the op is so expensive, if there's a round where, say, they're able to rip it out of his hand and give it to Wardell, when Wardell would be on a rifle or a pistol, and the impact that that could have potentially. And given how well JC Stunny can play with a rifle, it's just, it does worry me when looking at a team like this. But again, right off the bat, he's able to pick up a kill, slowing down the push from TSM and bringing it down to a 5-on-3.
Just very aggressive at the beginning there. The recon dart to get information coming out with combining with the operator too just makes things very difficult now for TSM as they left the spike. So at least there was no information that they dropped the spike for TSM. They could still pick it up. They could still force a rotate. You see all of them rotating so far because they've taken B side control, especially if Wardell is going to try to make noise over here. And that run back off camera, you saw the run back on B main. So Cutler heard that. That allows Drone to move forward too, and they could slowly inch back into B if they want to. And I think they're really counting on Wardell to try to sell that fake on the A side. But you just saw the star being pulled out here from Cutler. That kind of kept the shot up towards this B side. So back to a default Immortals. Not going to be easy once again for TSM to maintain their lead in this matchup.
30 seconds left.
What's difficult too is that Gangsta has now rotated in, and that means there's recon dart capability, and there's just so much utility being dumped at this site as the smoke comes out from Wardell to try to gain access to the site. Dash away. I think they're realizing that maybe B is the best course of action. Wardell can't even escape, but they do get the kill, the entry they needed to get onto B, and they will go ahead and secure the spike in that territory. But it's going to be difficult. It's a 2-on-4 and barely so. Drone's on 11 HP. That puts all of the pressure on Cutler here, who's sitting on a full boat. Meanwhile, you've got pretty much full HP for everyone other than JC standing on the other side.
Yeah, and an Odin too. Recon dart's about to come out. Oh, it's already been shot out. This is going to be just difficult. They force out the Cosmic Divide. That could maybe help a bit. So you see the shot darts coming out, and now Cutler spotted. Not going to be winnable at this point.
Yeah. I mean, especially with Gangsta on the Odin, there's so much spam potential, and there's not really any safe spot to hide on that A site, or B site, excuse me. So you've got Drone, who's low HP, that could easily be taken care of through a wall. And then the same could be said for his teammate, who would then be left in a 1-on-4. This was the surprising thing. I think Wardell was spotted on the top edge of that smoke to the right, but also had made noise with the dash back. So Wardell had actually gone to the site, threw a cloud burst down, didn't see anything on short, and before it could fade, dashed back into long and started to run away, but did a weird double back, and in that double back moment, was dropped by the player playing on site, which was Chemicals, who was sitting around the corner the whole time waiting for him. Again, looking at the minimap at the start, it's quite comical with the amount of utility that gets dumped out early between Killjoys and Astras on both sides. And yet again, another Viper's Pit, this one actually over in B main.
Very potent, actually. It's so hard to cross into that right now, so for them to double up early into the round for Immortals and are able to place that Viper's Pit into the B side, you're following players again into so much utility, this time on the A side. I mean, the moment of salvation right now, or the light at the end of the tunnel for TSM, is that at least they have 5 rounds on attack. I don't know if the 6th round's going to happen.
Ult coming out from Gangsta. We've talked about how good Gangsta's been in the past with connections on his ult, but not quite where it needed to be this time around.
You should run.
Sabrosa was up a decent distance in mid. There's the ult coming out. Potentially scare them out of that position. It's not the worst idea, given the way that they're currently set up over on B main with the Viper ult. That'll try to push them out of mid. But here comes the play as the LMG really opens up. You've got one player left remaining for Dell. You can't hear much beyond the shots being fired, and at the tail end of the half, Chemical says, why not? Might as well. Throws down his ult too. I'm surprised that the ult from Sabrosa didn't really do much. I thought we would have seen a little bit more. Now, I want to go back and actually watch it to see the positions. If we catch it on replay, I'm not sure.
Well, they were all the way back and passive for Immortals, right? You had one in the backside of the ramp. You had 2 towards the backside heaven by the site, because all the utility towards A main could actually prevent this push from happening. And at the same time, if Wardell were to dash into the site, well, he's going to dash into a point where he's potentially out in the open, where 3 players playing more passively are able to punish him on that one too. So Immortals readjusting quite well to the ult that was placed down by Hayes, and they take this 7-5 scoreline.
It looked like, though, ShotUp was in the path, but I think that I don't know what happened. Did ShotUp dismiss to dodge the ult? Because ShotUp was in market. if I remember correctly. Maybe I'm just misremembering.
No, you did. He killed Haze.
But then the ult continued, so I'm wondering if Shot Up dismissed to dodge the ult, because it looked like he stayed in market, but maybe I was just focused on something else and misremembering. I'll have to go back and watch the VOD. Either way, that is 7 straight rounds for Immortals. So a promising start for TSM, but Immortals, they put their foot on the gas pedal and they did not let go. And a large part of that started with Rossi and his control on short, but then Rossi started getting mobile, using the ult over on B main in the last round, just making things more difficult and uncomfortable for TSM. That said, we're in a pistol round. We'll see who's going to come out on top of this one. Immortals looks like they're going to be pressuring towards the A site. Recon Dart goes out. There's the gravity well to try to slow them down. The Owl drone goes out. They're smoked off currently on short. Cutler's like, I'm not even shooting. This isn't fair. His teammate's the one that's spamming through the smoke. And Cutler takes a bullet to the dome. He pays the ultimate price, the ultimate sacrifice for his teammate. Spike's been planted. It's a 5-on-4 in favor of Immortals on the site. TSM, though, still trying to retake. You've got Wardell Heaven currently playing an interesting game as his target continues to leap. JC Stani very low on HP, shot up down to 51. JC Stani actually gets a kill through the floor, but it'll fall down to the last remaining player, and finally Shot Up with his leaping antics, able to get a couple of kills and secure the pistol round. That's now 8 in a row for IMT.
This is where it gets really good for IMT as well. Just like the pulse plant, getting that poison cloud onto the ground. This is set up. Yeah. They've actually practiced, and Rossi is doing really good for Immortals to call out right now. And we talked about before going into the series, they're currently at a practice facility for practicing, for boot camping, and for the tournaments. So it's not necessarily a full LAN experience, but when you have players next to you and you're catching up this way, it builds that confidence. Winning 8 rounds in a row, they on that previous round, they didn't care. They just continued to jump, and they were probably laughing as they were shooting down TSM on that retake on the A side. So the confidence continues to build up, where it could start getting very detrimental here for TSM, and they had to find a good solution now.
Might be interesting. Poor drone. He has no choice at that point. He's got to peek. As the Lear comes through, it's one of those, well, that sucks kind of moments. Now, Wardell has hit some incredible shots, but has to move and change positions. The dart in his belly makes things a little bit more awkward and uncomfortable. Hayes was in market, able to get a second kill. Gangsta finally shows up with an LMG. Spam shots coming out from Wardell, not connecting. And that shock dart landed right in his gut. The follow-up is there as well. Things aren't really looking so good here for the eco round for TSM. A follow-up kill, at least coming in at the tail end by Sabrosa, who's down to 10 HP, has to watch out for the turret. He's going to die to it. I was thinking it was going to happen. He was trying to find an edge to take the turret out of the equation, but the turret has other plans.
Yeah, and I think that's totally fine too. I think they're on that pistol. He's 10 HP. You want to know where they're sitting at right now. I mean, even off the turret kill, it's definitely still going to bring an order no matter what. So Chemicals is going to be able to build that up. But at least he doesn't give that confidence for Immortals to just be like, okay, we know exactly where he's at. Let's try to chase after him. Now in this situation, the money's back in favor for TSM in terms of the buy. Of course, the money overall still favors Immortals. But this is where the weaponry could potentially help TSM back here on the defender side, where the guided light to look out first. That's going to blind the Owl drone. But they're pushing so far up, and that tags Sabrosa. He gets shot through the smoke, and that's just unfortunate. Another one through the smoke, and an early one-player advantage for Immortals.
Immortal backs off after securing plant. Spam coming through from Gangsta to just slow down the retake. Everyone coming through from Garden and over towards Spawn. They have to contend with all of the players currently grouped up on long. The spike was tapped for a moment, but had to get pulled off of because of a nano swarm that was dropped down. There's the snake bite going down on top of the spike as well. Immortals has so much delay utility when it comes to a post plant. It's going to be so difficult between the nano swarm, snake bites, and then also you've got Astra utility.
Recon darts is just very difficult.
It's going to be very difficult. And the shock darts, like there's just so much they can do in a post plant that will be difficult for TSM to deal with.
And that's one of those things with this new meta right now. Look at how far back everybody from Immortals was compared to where TSM was, right? On the on the pulse plan situation. So to have all 4 players playing towards the A main, to be able to use that utility to try to keep Viper alive, to try to keep JC Stani alive on top of that too, it's going to be very hard for TSM to retake. They have to push back. They have to be aggressive on their own. So they have to, I was saying before in this game, the double initiator is going to help for that, to counter that, right? You have the recon on their side, you have the flashes on their end too, and you have your own Astra to try to push back and regain that possession, regain that control towards that A main. But when you're losing players that early into the round, it just makes it harder and harder for you to retake, right? Because they lost Cutler 1 round, this round again, and they lost Sabrosa as the first death of that previous round. So those agents I was telling you about that could help on the retakes are not there for that opportunity.
Wardell going inside the smoke, has to be careful. Oh, that's awkward. The drone just takes the strangest path, maneuvering through that smoke. And now Hayes is left alone, tries to hit the shot on the leaping target, does at least get one, but there's the flank coming through from the window. Immortals is looking to close this game out without allowing TSM to win a round since round 5. The early rounds went TSM's direction off of a great setup that Sabrosa had going towards the B site. We would see Sabrosa open up with Guiding Light, Trailblazer to follow, Guiding Light again, and then he'd basically just kind of like walk out onto B and see what was there. He would use some Astra utility as well if necessary towards spawn to give him some more lurk potential, but it's really quieted down since those early rounds. Their attacking side started to fall flat, and now their defensive side is struggling. There is a full buy round coming in here that does include the off-purchase position given away by the recon dart. You see Gangsta is just having a field day, currently spamming through the edge, taking out the turret no less. That makes this position from Hayes a little bit more awkward.
Well, Nanoswarm's thrown at the same time. Some shock darts came out. Even a lockdown to prevent him from pushing in. So trying to run down the clock, trying to force down the rotation and allow this battle to happen. And as you force Immortals back, do you kill Noise? Do you go back into her? They still have a lot of utility for it. So, well, let's see what happens. It was Killjoy after Killjoy, and now back to a stalemate.
Killjoy's making a Venn diagram of the B site. Anyone in the middle would be the ones detained, which obviously does not happen. Recon Dart does give away Drone's position. He's stuck in such a weird position. Cosmic Divide goes down. Shot Up has popped Empress as well. They're trying to guarantee the site take. They've still got to deal with Drone. He's waiting around the corner, up on top of the boxes. His position is solid. It's a 3K for Drone. Make it 4 on the round. TSM finally put themselves back on the scoreboard after losing 11 straight, and it's all off the back of some heroics from Drone.
Yeah, the repositioning from Drone was really good, but also you had to give it for Hayes. Even though he's only good for 1 kill, taking that off position, like the off angle right in front of the dices, he was basically in a do-or-die spot against an Empress of Shot Up, where faster rapid fire, faster reaction time from Shot Up would have been easy melt there onto Hayes and potentially already Drone dying at the same time. So with Hayes dying, them focusing on the second player that's back at the staircase allows Drone to be in that tight angle to get that 4K in the end. So very well done for TSM, despite all that chaotic push at the beginning from Immortals inside the site.
Yeah, I think that's something that we didn't really mention. You had briefly touched upon it there. Wardell was back steps. That's why they weren't aiming at Drone. They were trying to deal with both players. So Wardell was hanging out on the back steps, kind of just peeking out, taking pop shots, but it allowed Drone to hang out in that position a little while longer. Gave him more staying power, and even when it came down to Rossi, the last remaining player for IMT, there was still concern over whether or not there was going to be a player on back steps holding that line. So it's just an awkward position, and it was really well played by both Drone and Wardell, despite the fact that Drone gets the trophy and the MVP award on the round. 50 seconds left, and we haven't seen much here in round number 18. Wardell is holding long A with an op.
This
Waiting
is so
for the peak to come through. Yeah, well, you've got that Astra utility
exactly.
down. They could easily just pull him in.
Not even for Wardell, but for Sabrosa even.
Oh, that's brutal. As soon as he steps into the smoke, it dies. Sabrosa's in a great spot to get at least one. The Hunter's Fury comes out, but the spam is just spot on. Great damage being dealt by the Hunter's Fury, but no! JC Stani stepping up big.
Huge
And now again, it's TSM who's at reduced power. 2 players remaining. At least Hayes catches one on the flank, but the spike will go down and force the fight over on the A side.
At least you have a good rifler and drone right now. Two players are low on HP, waiting for Hayes to come up. They're going to double up together towards the doorway and try to retake it, but more as the time continues to take on this spike, the better the positioning is for Immortals on this triple crossfire. So let's see what happens. That.
Yeah. Really not much to watch. I thought they might wait for a recon dart, but didn't happen. They just go for the peek, and the lineup works out so nicely for shot up on the ADS. 20-7 for Chemicals here as Killjoy, 16-9 for Rossi as Viper. On the opposite side, Drone and Sabrosa on the only two players for TSM in double digits. 16-14 for Drone, 10-14 for Sabrosa. Cutler just having a rough one, 2-15 currently. Just can't seem to get the best of his opposition, but still making great plays with that Astra utility. There's the flash coming through. Drone does give away the position, so the Al drone going to spot at least one player out. Cutler's hanging out underneath site. There is a lot of firepower waiting on the other side of Long as all of IMT is grouped up. But they've decided to back off. They don't like what they saw over on A, and they did pull a lot of resources in that direction, to be fair. There's only one player currently playing over towards B. And that would be Hayes, who's actually playing back towards spawn. So they're playing retake on the B site currently, which is fine. If they can actually manage to retake, it's going to be tough because Rossi has the ult. If they can get that spike down, it's going to be very difficult for TSM to get back in.
The Trailblazer came out. He thought nobody was going to be there for Sabrosa, and as he peeks out, two players came out there, and that was so close on the timing. Could have been picked off there. The wall comes back up, and because of that wall, and you were able to push Sabrosa back, he's rotating to where they think the hit's happening towards B, but they're about to split into the A side for Immortals, where there's only two players heading up there.
A little scary there for Cutler, jumping and trying to peek. Nano Swarm will force him to peek. There's Wardell with the backup. Shot-ups coming in on the flank, and the site has fallen apart. It's down to this one player on site, Drone, who tries to charge out and make the hero play, but everything lands in Hayes' lap, and this is what we were talking about. That ult coming in from Viper is going to be so hard for them to deal with in the post-plant. A strong first map showing from IMT, 13-6, the victory scoreline, as TSM got one round after winning the first 5.
Yeah, you had that. I think it was that one round where you saw like they had 4 or 5 ults there for the defender side of Immortals, and that's where it just started snowballing and seeing how Immortals were looking good on that defender side, starting with that Viper's Pit on that A main, and everything else in terms of the setup just continued to look very, very good on their A side holds for Immortals. So unfortunate for TSM, took them such a very long time, 11 rounds I think you mentioned, Mark, before they actually got their 6th round. But after that, it's been one way all the way for Immortals. It was very tough for TSM to find a footing, especially on defender side, when you have 3 players within that second half on the defender side for TSM that died by being sprayed through smoke or tagged and sprayed through smoke. And that just shows how Astra is very good at just creating that space for your teammates and allowing that combination with that Sova to help out Immortals to get those entries into those A sites.
The last time these two teams faced off was during the open qualifiers. I think it was in Challengers 1 for Stage 2. And Immortals crushed TSM 2-0. They were not close games. So that's a scary first map. It does kind of bring back some of those scars for TSM as like, oh God, please not again. But now we're moving to a different map. We're going to be going to Icebox. They didn't play Icebox in that previous series, so there's still a chance here, but that is Immortals' pick. This was the map that we would have expected to see TSM come up with a big victory. But after the first 5 rounds, they win one other round. I mean, Immortals just looked so incredibly good. But before we jump into that next map, we are going to throw things to a break. And when we come back, we'll see if TSM can kind of shake that one off and readjust into map number 2, or if it's going to be Immortals picking up a massive 2-0 win over TSM to kick off the day. Stay tuned.